all. Again, I'm kind of like part of the family now, extended family. So I've talked to you about metabolism and systemic health in the past, and today we're going to talk about metabolism and brain health, mental health, and what the connection and what the role of food is in metabolic health of the brain. And I will make the argument during the course of the hour that, in fact, mental health is metabolic health of the brain. Okay? That the two are actually indistinguishable. And the same processes that are going on peripherally to cause disease are going on centrally to cause disease. And the treatments, guess what, are the same. Real food. We're gonna go there, and you'll see why. Okay, so again, I always have to start with disclosures. Okay, so I did write these books for the general public, and Metabolical has a lot of what I'm talking about today. I'm chief medical officer for these 4 companies, and I'm a paid advisor to these other. And I'm an advisor to the UC Davis Innovation Institute for Food and Health, who's looking at all of these very specifically. Okay, and I'm also the chief science officer of a nonprofit here in the Bay Area called Eat Real, whose mission is to get real food into K-12 nationally. Okay. All right, starts here. Starts with 1920, okay, when physicians at Johns Hopkins University realized that patients who were in diabetic ketoacidosis, who also had concomitant seizure disorders, stopped seizing when they were in ketoacidosis. Okay? And so people said, well, why is that? And so they started experimenting with the ketogenic diet. And they found, lo and behold, getting people to be ketogenic, that is, lowering their insulin and inducing fat mobilization and oxidation via ketones, because ketones are the breakdown products of fat, led to a cessation in seizure frequency and seizure severity in these patients. And so then people started experimenting with ketogenic diets in other things. And then, of course, we had the Atkins diet. And then, of course, moving on. And now, of course, everybody is just flagrantly keto all over the world for all sorts of reasons, including our colleague here, Mark, who has lost 30 pounds and had his ALT go from 80 down to 24. Right? Did I get it right?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a good thing. And the question is, do you have to be that extreme? And does it work for everybody? And why does it work in the first place? So that's where we're going. So it's possible that the ketogenic diet could prevent seizures through metabolic effects that are direct at the brain, or it could be through gut microbiota effects because it changes the microbiome. The ketogenic diet changes the microbiome because it provides different nutrients than were there before. So you expect different bacteria to glom onto that differently. And so there's the possibility of changing your amino acid profile and therefore changing what might be excitatory at the level of the CNS. All of these things could potentially lead to changes in seizure susceptibility. Well, then people said, well, could the ketogenic diet help with other types of brain problems aside from seizures? Now, my colleague and now good friend, Christopher Palmer at Harvard Medical School, was the first person to recognize this possibility. He was presented with a guy who had severe manic depression, who had tried everything and was refractory to all medical therapy. He also happened to be 300 pounds. And the guy wanted both help for his bipolar and also help for his weight. And Palmer didn't know what to tell him, but he said, I've heard about this ketogenic diet, maybe that'll help your weight. And it turned out, not only did it help his weight, but his bipolar resolved. And since then, he's gone on to treat numerous patients and had developed case series and now is doing clinical trials with, randomized control trials to determine whether or not the ketogenic diet will actually fix manic depression, schizophrenia, and multiple other CNS brain/mental health problems. And in fact, now there's actually a literature on the ketogenic diet in psychiatry. Now, this talk is not about the ketogenic diet. This talk is about food, okay, in general, and how it might impact. But it gives us a window into this issue and this problem. And the reason is because the ketones don't need insulin to work. They don't need insulin to enter cells, and they don't need insulin to stimulate energy uptake. They just get in. There's no transporter for ketones. They just get in. So if you've got lots of ketones in your blood, they're going to get to your brain, okay? And don't need any help. There's no key and lock here. They just go. And so that might be a reason why it might be better. But it also might be because the insulin went down. And that might be better. We don't know yet. So the question that Christopher asked is, could food or even fasting be a psychopharmacologic therapy? And that's where we're going today. Now, many investigators, many clinicians, many scientists, many pundits have postulated a relationship between metabolic and mental health, and that they might actually be the same. And here are a bunch of different books, and we've talked about some of them today at lunchtime. So David Perlmutter wrote Brain Maker. Felice Jacka down in Australia wrote Brain Changer. A lot of brains here. Okay, my colleague Bill Wilson in Lowell, Massachusetts wrote Brain Drain, and there Emmer Meyer, who's at UCLA and does microbiome work, wrote The Mind-Gut Connection, and Christopher Palmer's new book Brain Energy, which is actually perhaps the best of the bunch. And this hasn't escaped, shall we say, the cognoscente, in academic medicine, because this is from Lancet. Okay, and here's this is a very important quote. The emerging and compelling evidence for nutrition as a crucial factor in the high prevalence and incidence of mental disorders suggests that diet is as important to psychiatry as it is to cardiology, endocrinology, and gastroenterology. I couldn't agree more. And it's nice that somebody at Lancet figured that out, because I'll be honest with you, they haven't figured out much anything else. So, food. What can you do to food to either make it good or bad? Okay? Real food works, but clearly we're not eating real food. 73% of the items in the grocery store are not real food. They are ultra-processed food. And is that ultra-processed food actually impacting our brains in a negative fashion? That's the question. So what are they doing to food? Well, you can add something. You can add vitamins or omega-3s. You can subtract something like artificial colors or allergens. These are all out of ultra-processed food to make the food better. You could change the macronutrient composition or the timing. So you could go vegan. You could do time-restricted eating, or intermittent fasting. Okay. You could alter the microbiome, which I think is a great way to do this. And the easiest way to do that is not with a probiotic, but rather with a prebiotic, because a prebiotic will allow the right bacteria to grow. A probiotic won't. That's why you have to keep taking a probiotic, because after all, if a probiotic worked, you'd only have to take it once. It's a live culture. Why doesn't it just set up shop the first time? And the reason is because the internal milieu of the intestine is so inhospitable. That's why those bacteria are not there in the first place. That's how they got killed off. That's why you need the probiotic. Except that you haven't fixed the milieu, so why would you expect it to work? Because it won't take. So fix that first, and that's called fiber. Okay, and then of course all the above, and you can do that with the ketogenic diet. Now, why would these work? Why could these food manipulations have beneficial effects in terms of psychopharmacology? CNS is central nervous system. It could alter CNS energy metabolism, that is, making the mitochondria work better to make more ATP. It could alter CNS neurotransmission, and we're going to talk about the glutamate GABA cycle in a minute. It could alter trophic factors, in the CNS, like, for instance, leptin and BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which cause neuronal outgrowth and, in some cases, neurogenesis. It could alter CNS exposures like toxins and infections. One of the big ones is strep. And I think you all know this because all you have to do is go back to 1791 when Sydenham demonstrated that a strep infection caused severe chorioathetosis, called Sydenham's chorea, due to rheumatic fever. Okay? Like, why would a bacteria cause a change in your